Hey, so the thing I'd like to talk about today is the recent fun and the recent enjoyment I've found from Chinese. Now, I've always been aware that studying the language would be rewarding, but I feel there is a disconnect between knowing something will be rewarding and then actually feeling those rewards. So the thing I just like to talk about is how in the last few weeks, no, the last 2 months, I'd say, the language has really started to pay dividends. So first, just to talk about like the initial problems of learning the language. I mean, like first thing you get off the plane, you just gotta learn the vocabulary, right? Like Chinese very difficult in that I just had to sit down and study things. Now this is like, this is more difficult than I found this a lot more difficult because I had no way into the language, no hook. Say, for instance, you're studying French, and you see a sign that says like le hôpital, you're like, oh, probably the hospital, insofar as those two words are spelt the same. Whereas in Chinese, like a hospital is what even is hospital? Yishang. No similarity, like nothing at all. Also, that might be doctor. I can't actually remember. It's either hospital or doctor. My point being that like there is no like way in when it comes to vocabulary. But you got to learn a lot of it. So the first problem I had was literally just sitting down and having like long lists of words and just rote learning them all. And I never realized, like, I don't know, I feel it's like the unsexy bit to language learning that I just forgot existed. Insofar as it's like, it's the dull sitting in a room for like 4 hours just trying to get these 30 words into your head. And it normally not working. The most useful thing anyone ever told me is that when you're starting to learn a language, when you have a vocab list, if you sit down and try and learn it, you'll remember about a third of the words. And the reason I found that useful is because it just made me feel that I wasn't stupid or going insane. So initially, problems. And then also the problems is that, like, pronunciation. So even once I had the words, I found a lot initially that I couldn't actually say things to people. So say that, like, I was aware of the sentence I wanted to say. I wanted to ask someone, like, oh hi, like where are the toilets? So that's like 你好, 卫生间在哪儿? Like hello, where are the toilets? But because Chinese is a tonal language, because like because like ma and ma and ma all have like different meanings. Your tones on a word then means it's totally different. In the same way that like would and could, like the way you move your lips in English completely changes the difference in that word. So yeah, this was an initial difficulty I had with Chinese, is that even once I could theoretically know what the word was, I still couldn't say it. And there were pronunciation difficulties as well, right? Like there are sounds in Chinese, like the city Xi'an, which I still don't know how to pronounce correctly. Or country, like China is Zhonghua. And those are just like sounds that don't exist in English. Just that, like, in English, you don't have to move your mouth in that way. So those were, like, difficulties I found initially. Also, like, those are the initial difficulties with conversation, but also, like, when listening to people, the problem you have when talking is that, like, when listening is... So say when I talk, I use all of the words in my vocabulary, right? Like, I know all those words because I have to summon them from my brain. Which kind of makes sense. Well, makes a lot of sense. It sounds even stupid to say. But then conversely, when I'm listening to someone, that's even harder because they're pooling from all of the vocabulary they know. And say if they're a native speaker, that'll be thousands of words, of which I'll probably know like a few hundred. Especially when it comes to synonyms, right? So people a lot would... I remember a difficulty I had early on is I asked someone for some hot water and they were like, oh yeah, you want some boiled water? And I didn't know what the word boiled water was, so I was like, oh, just hot water please. And they were like, yeah, boiled water. And I only know that I was making this mistake just because someone translated it afterwards. But this is kind of the difficulty that comes with that. And with conversations. And then finally, the difficulty with reading, being that, like, initially I started studying Pinyin. So, for example here, I'm just a book I have. So, Chinese character-based language, but obviously those characters are spoken. So the way that you study initially is you do... Is this going to show up? No. So you can kind of see here that you have the characters, and then above them you have English romanizations. So for the words how, meaning good, you would just have HAO. So basically, when I first started studying Chinese, I treated it like any other European language and only studied the alphabet version because otherwise it would just be far too many challenges to begin with if I also tried to learn characters. But the problem, of course, with only learning the alphabet version is you can't read things because no road signs are in the alphabet version, no menus. So at least the first 2 months I just couldn't read anything. But of course, these things change with time. These were the problems I found initially, and this made the language very difficult. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was really good fun, but it had a lot of challenges. But then recently, I think I noticed this when Mum and Kay came to visit, when I found myself having conversations with people. Recently, I've noticed those challenges aren't there. Insofar as I was in a ping pong room and I had a conversation with this person about where they were from in their hometown, and it was the first conversation I had where we like talked about things and stuff, and it was interesting. And I started reading these books. Now, you begin reading books called Two Red Shirts. Here you can see, incidentally, it has the characters, and then above them it has how those characters are written. So that says Liang Jian Hong Chen Shan. So I started reading books called Two Red Shirts, or like My Dog Called Kevin. Like very boring books, but the fact that I can read nonetheless. The fact that I can have conversations. The fact that now when I'm with cab drivers I can sit down and talk to them is fantastic. And then kind of my most recent thing is I started reading this. A very, very, very dumbed down version of Journey to the West. Which is like an actual story. I'm no longer just reading like excerpts of things called Red Shirts or My Dog Called Kevin, but actual storybooks. So yeah, this is kind of the thing I wanted to talk about then, is the really positive note that language learning has taken recently, in that it started being rewarding. Like, I feel if I stopped studying Chinese now, my grammar is awful, my pronunciation is awful. People can only understand me if they have patience, because I still structure sentences in an English way. Like, so for example, the sentence in English, on Saturday I will drink coffee, in Chinese is like, 我星期几喝咖啡, which is like I weekday 6 drink coffee, or like do you want to drink coffee would be like oh do you want to drink coffee on Saturday would be like you weekday 6 want to drink coffee, question word. So like there's this difference in the grammar, and like obviously my grammar is awful. So if I stopped lessons now, like, I would be really bad at Chinese, but I can get my point across. And I feel like I've reached a level now where I'm satisfied. I mean, maybe satisfied is the wrong word, because obviously I still want to improve further. I'm still here for a long time more. But I feel like I'm at a level now where I'm content. I feel that's the way to put it. I am happy with my level. Obviously, I'd like to speak better, have more conversations, because there's obviously still limitations with regards to my vocabulary. But things are good. Talking is rewarding. Books are fun, and it's just a good way to revise. I don't know, maybe that's just kind of the note I want to end this on, right? Like, I love that I've reached a level at Chinese where my revision is not sitting down for 4 hours with 30 words, but rather it's reading a book or talking to someone about their hometown and how it's different to Beijing. So yeah, Chinese is awesome. It's really good fun, and it's really rewarding. Finally. So that's kind of it, really. I'm having a great time here, and the language is facilitating that so much.